Hi everybody, welcome to Christian Homestead. My name is Jared. Before you type it, this is not a new intro. I've been using it for years. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you've seen it before. It's not replacing my other intro. It's an intro that I use for these kind of videos. If there's something big that's happened that I feel like is a sign of the times, in this case, a sign in the heavens, that's what I use it for. You haven't seen it in a while because I haven't noticed anything for a while. I was talking to my friend Mindy with Temples of Jesus on the phone. Make sure to subscribe to her. And she brought this up. She's like, do you not make these kind of videos anymore? And I said, no, it's not that. I haven't seen anything. I'm always looking through the news and you guys are always sending me emails. In fact, a lot of the signs of the times type videos have come from your emails, but I just haven't received very many emails. Sometimes you guys will send me emails for things, but I feel like it's not something to make a video about because it's more on the common side. I don't do videos for every single earthquake or tornado or hurricane. Maybe collectively, like a lot of tornadoes or hurricanes, if it's like a record-breaking hurricane season or a particularly destructive tornado and it's like in a significant location. In the scriptures, the phrase signs and wonders is repeated a number of times. And I don't think a sign has to be something that's magic, supernatural, unexplainable. And when we think about the word wonder, and we've looked up the definition of the word wonder in a few different dictionaries, it's simply something that causes you to feel awe, or it's unusual, it stands out for some reason. Maybe it's record breaking, it's never happened before, things like that. And so that's where my mind goes as I'm trying to determine if I should report on something and put it on my spreadsheets. Not saying that smaller things can't be signs, but for my channel, it needs to be something that stands out. So what happened was I was on Facebook and I came across this article from Unilad Tech. NASA stunned as sun broadcasts mysterious radio signal for 19 days straight. It turns out that NASA wrote its own article, and I'm just going to read directly from there. This is really interesting, and it ties in to President Nelson. Just hang in there with me. This is so interesting. When NASA scientists first observed a particular radio burst from the sun in August 2025, there was nothing unusual about it. But then the radio burst kept going. Typically, solar radio bursts like these are a few hours to days, but this one was different. By the time it was over, the radio burst had lasted 19 days, far exceeding scientists' expectations and the previous record, which lasted just 5 days. I'm going to show you some more numbers from another source, but this is high. You already get the sense this is highly unusual. The typical radio burst of this type, a few hours to maybe a couple days. Before this, the record was 5 days. This one went for 19 days. That's the better part of a month. So I don't think you have to be an expert to understand that something very unusual happened here. Now, we only have the data that modern science has collected. So it could be, if you went back 500 years, 1,000 years, maybe you would see something like, oh yeah, this happens every 300 years or something like that. Again, that's not the point. And if that is the explanation, if that was the case, that wouldn't invalidate this as a sign. It's something that's stunning us, but it's not just the fact that this happened. There's this President Nelson element to it that I'm about to show you. But even if he wasn't part of it, I still feel like this is a sign in the heavens. You have this picture right here. let me just read the text underneath. A record-breaking radio burst from the sun in August 2025 was found to have originated from a feature in the sun's atmosphere called a helmet streamer. This image, taken during the August 21st, 2017 total solar eclipse, shows the classic V shape of a large helmet streamer. So I guess, I don't know if this is like two helmet streamers, because there's kind of like two of these pointy areas, but I guess just this general area right here. Okay, these types of radio bursts, called type 4 bursts, emerge from the reservoirs of electrons trapped by the sun's magnetic fields. While the radio waves themselves are harmless, the same magnetic environments can produce solar activity that sends dangerous particles toward Earth, which can affect satellites and spacecraft. To analyze the event, researchers combined data from NASA's STEREO, Park Solar Probe, and wind missions, as well as ESA and NASA Solar Orbiter. Each mission observed the radio burst for a few days over its 19-day duration, as the sun's rotation carried the burst into view of the different spacecraft, which were spread across the inner solar system. So I guess this event was of such magnitude that they needed these different instruments and spacecraft and satellites and whatever to observe it. I'm guessing it's because the sun itself rotates, and so as it rotates, maybe after a while it's no longer in view of one of these instruments, and so it has to be observed from the other side. But they're making note of that as though to say that, yeah, this was a big thing. It lasted a long time. We had to use all these different assets that are available to us. All right, well, there's a link in this article that takes you to a paper that was written about it. This is IOP Science, the Astrophysical Journal Letters. And right at the beginning of the abstract, it gives us some more detailed information about when this happened. So this was from August 21st of last year until September 9th. Do you know what September 9th is? That's President Nelson's birthday. In fact, last year, that was his last birthday that he celebrated in mortality, and it was his 101st. This was before passing away that same month on the 27th of the month. So look, over the course of the channel, we have noticed a lot of what I would classify as signs in the heavens that have coincided with President Nelson. I should have pulled it up, but I have a spreadsheet for signs that have to do with the moon, whether it be lunar eclipses or solar eclipses and blue moons and other things. And from the very get-go, in January of 2018, there were signs in the heavens having to do with the moon. More recently, you had this unusual occurrence where President Nelson passed away on the 27th of September. Exactly 3 months later, President Holland passed away on the 27th of December. And exactly in the middle of their death dates, we had this take place. There was a third aurora event that could be seen throughout the entire United States, all 50 states. This is a picture that I took at the temple lot that night. Thank goodness it was clear skies. But this happened exactly in the middle, the night of November 11th into the morning of November 12th. It's not that there's a prophecy necessarily related to this. Sometimes people get confused. They're like, well, why is that significant? I don't know that it is, but it's unusual. And I feel like at the very least, it highlights their service, President Nelson and President Holland, the president of the church and the president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. It's unusual. It's unlikely. It may just be a sign, maybe to their families, maybe to President Oaks. President Oaks said that he really felt the weight on his shoulders when he took upon himself the mantle, when the mantle was passed to him of being the president of the church. Maybe if he caught wind of this, he would feel just that much more comfort that it was their time to go. It's time to move on, to the next chapter in church history. I don't know. But I'm just taking note of it, and I find it very, very unlikely that this would happen. So, going back to this record-breaking radio burst, it far exceeded the previous record, and it ended on President Nelson's last birthday. Make of that what you will. I'm not going to tell you what it means, but I do feel like it's connected in some way. Later on in the abstract, it says 3 fast coronal mass ejections, or CMEs, plausibly helped sustain the electron population, maintaining the continuum. So my understanding is that they think this could be why it happened, what the conditions that led to this happening, but they're not exactly sure. Later on, it says long duration hectometric type 4 bursts are rare. The longest previous example, May 18th to the 23rd of 2002. It persisted for about 5 to 6 days. The first thing that comes to my mind when I think about 2002 is the 2002 Winter Olympics in Salt Lake. I suppose this would have happened after that because the Winter Olympics, I think, were just like in February. I don't know if they went into March, but I think they started in February, go for a couple weeks. I probably should have looked to see if there's like some other thing that happened. Maybe you could do that. Check and see if there was anything significant on, during that period, May 18th to the 23rd of 2002. And then later it says, a statistical survey likewise found only 3 events out of hundreds with durations over 16 hours. Okay, so now we're getting more detailed information about this, about how rare it is. Okay, so the record-breaking event, 5 to 6 days. And then out of hundreds of these types of events, only 3, which I guess would include the record-breaking event, only 3 have been more than 16 hours. Only 3. So it is very rare. And then it says, a Cycle 24 catalog reports typical hectometric type 4 durations of tens of minutes to a few hours. So that's the norm. The norm is tens of minutes to a few hours. And then there's only been 3 times that it's been more than 16 hours. And one of those times, it was about 5 to 6 days. And now we have this one that just happened last year that ended on President Nelson's last birthday that went for 19 days. That is crazy. Okay, so let's go to something that President Nelson said in the October 2022 General Conference. I read this like a million times. It's his talk called Overcome the World and Find Rest. And toward the beginning of the talk, he says, but my dear brothers and sisters, so many wonderful things are ahead. In coming days, we will see the greatest manifestations of the Savior's power that the world has ever seen. Now, I have quotes from various general authorities that say that part of what this means is the number of temples that are being built, as well as miracles taking place in people's lives. But I don't think it's constrained to just that, because 7 days after he said this, if we go to my spreadsheet called Signs, Stars / Black Holes, 7 days after he said that, We literally saw the most powerful thing that we've ever observed with modern instruments. Let me just read my entry here. Most powerful explosion ever seen, gamma ray burst GRB 221009A. It lasted 7 minutes, which, you know, if you've been watching my channel, 7 was all throughout President Nelson's presidency. Sometimes like this, where it's not like he controlled it, unless he like prayed for that to happen and specifically requested that. But other times where he clearly, intentionally used the number 7, like his first general conference, he announced 7 temples. His first global ministry tour, he went to 7 countries, and there's a lot of other times that he used the number 7. So it lasted 7 minutes and affected the ionosphere for 10 hours, exactly 1 week after Sunday sessions of General Conference. And it was also a Rev Sukkot, or the first day of the Feast of Tabernacles at sundown. So like Feast of Tabernacles Eve, but at sundown, that's when it starts. So we have this. Now look, in column E, I've just created this to count the number of these type of events. Okay. President Nelson said, the greatest manifestations of the Savior's power that the world has ever seen. And I think that includes a number of things, both in the church, but maybe also in nature. We literally saw the most powerful thing that we've ever seen with this, the most powerful explosion. April 2023, Betelgeuse, which is like the main star of the Orion constellation. It's done a lot of very interesting things, by the way, throughout history. Betelgeuse shines 150% its usual brightness, moves from the 10th brightest to the 7th brightest star in the sky. Its bright to dim cycle twice as fast as usual. All right, just a month later, May 3rd, the most powerful solar flare ever recorded. This was a solar flare from another star, not our sun, but a star in the V1355 Orionis system. And then later that year, in October, Vela pulsar, highest ever energy from gamma rays from a pulsar discovered. November, so just the next month, the most massive black hole merger ever discovered to date with signal GW231123. The resulting black hole was 225 solar masses. You might say, well, the light is only reaching us now. This happened, however many thousands, millions of years ago, because light takes time to reach us. And that's true. I don't think that's the point. We don't need to set these rules where it's like, well, it has to happen on that day, or it has to happen, in 2023, not 3 million years ago. No, I would argue no, because if it's a sign, if the Lord is trying to communicate something to you, it's not about when it happened. What it has to do with is the message, the timing of when the receiver receives the message. So if this is a sign in the heavens, and I think that it is, and I feel like it's part of this collection of signs, the Lord can do whatever he wants. All time is before him. He can program the universe and the galaxies and these stars and black holes in such a way that we'll notice it at the right time. Okay, so that's number 5. And then we have the first one of 2024 in February. That's when the paper was published. We don't have the exact date of when this happened that I know of yet. So paper published, universe's brightest object discovered. Quasar J0529-4351, brightest and fastest growing quasar. Before I continue, do you think that this is normal? Do you think that this is normal that all these biggest, most powerful, brightest types of these things are happening in such a small window of time after the prophet said what he did. July 2nd, 2025. Longest ever gamma ray burst, GRB 250702b, lasting 7 hours, of course, reported in the news December 9th. Okay. And then we got this new one that we're talking about. Record-breaking Type 4 radio burst from Sun lasting 19 days from August 21st to September 9th. The previous record was 5 days. Before this one, only 3 have ever lasted more than 16 hours. Ends on President Nelson's 101st birthday. Very unlikely, in my opinion. And then the last one that I have on here, the 9th, comes from November 4th of 2025. Paper published, largest flare, nicknamed Superman, from a supermassive black hole observed. With a brightness of 10 trillion suns, it is described as a quote-unquote 1 in a million event. So the last 3 years or so, we've been having all these different events happen. And I do feel like these are signs of the times. If they're not signs, or if they're not signs in the heavens, then what is a sign in the heaven? What is a sign in the heaven? I have quotes. I'm not going to read them now, but I have a couple quotes talking about technology, like satellites, airplanes, stuff like that being signs in the heavens, like man-made objects being signs in the heavens. So we have it on good authority that those are signs in the heavens. But aside from that, what else would be a sign in the heaven? If not stuff like this. This is this is April 8th. I think it was April 8th of 2024, the month after the Kirtland Temple was purchased from Community of Christ, the day after General Conference. I was there for the total solar eclipse. This picture was taken from a subscriber, Floyd Gowans, and thankfully he sent me a copy. But you have just this amazing image of the total solar eclipse, one of only 2 of these great American eclipses, which those don't happen every day. Before the 2017 eclipse, you have to go back. I think Elder Stevenson pointed it out in his October 2017 talk that it had been 99 years since you've had like a great American solar eclipse, like one that goes from coast to coast. So we had the one in 2017. Again, the path of totality went over all the major Missouri church sites. And then this one, 7 years later, it went over the Sacred Grove, Fayette, New York, and it also went over the Kirtland Temple. Those eclipses were very specific signs to the church. I feel very confident about that. But, is this not a sign of the times and a sign in the heavens? This right here, especially with the timing of President Nelson and President Holland's passing. This right here, this was, I always forget. So we had October 7th, and then that was in 2023. And then the next year, that's when you had the first ever direct attack from Iran on Israel. And that's what you're seeing here. These are Iranian ballistic missiles in the skies above Jerusalem as viewed from the Temple Mount. If this doesn't look biblical, I don't know what does. And given that man-made objects can be signs in the heavens, I think that this would definitely count. We've talked about the scriptures that talk about the stars casting themselves to the ground, falling from the heavens. This very well may be, and I feel like it's likely that this is what those prophets were seeing. Especially when you look at these cluster munitions. I don't think that we saw the cluster munitions until this most recent war. I don't think that they were used in the 12-day war. I could be wrong. But the first time that I noticed them, and the first time that people started posting videos of them was during this current war. That is still unresolved. These ones definitely look like stars falling from the heavens. You have other things too. You look, these were the skies above New York City and Washington, D.C. And it turns out a number of other capital cities, like capitals of states, and in Canada, capitals of provinces. It was a crazy year. This was from Canadian wildfire smoke. It was a really bad year for wildfires in Canada. Well, not just in Canada, but the world in general. And it caused these very apocalyptic looking scenes all across the United States for the most part, except for like the very deep south, as well as Canada. The smoke even went across the Atlantic Ocean and obscured the skies over Madrid, Spain, and Lisbon, Portugal. I had put together a map, but it's on my other computer and I haven't been able to transfer the files over to the what I'm using now. But it was a pretty incredible event. And there's so much more. there's so much more I could show you. So yeah, I do think that all these things, including this video, what we're talking about with this radio burst, I feel like they all qualify as signs in the heavens. And if these aren't signs in the heavens, then what is supposed to be a sign in the heaven? You tell me. And I always like to refer to this scripture. This is from 3rd Nephi chapter 2. I want to read verses 1 through 3. And it came to pass that thus passed away the 95th year also. And the people began to forget those signs and wonders. There's that phrase, signs and wonders. It shows up in the Book of Mormon. It shows up in the Bible. It's all throughout the scriptures. I think it even shows up in Doctrine and Covenants and whatever. Okay, so the people began to forget those signs and wonders which they had heard, and began to be less and less astonished at a sign or a wonder from heaven, insomuch that they began to be hard in their hearts and blind in their minds, and began to disbelieve all which they had heard and seen, imagining up some vain thing in their hearts that it was wrought by men, and by the power of the devil, to lead away and deceive the hearts of the people. And thus did Satan get possession of the hearts of the people again, insomuch that he did blind their eyes and lead them away to believe that the doctrine of Christ was a foolish and a vain thing. It's basically saying not just like the doctrine, but the prophecies. The prophecies of the signs of the times of his first coming, and you can easily apply this to the second coming. There's a lot of people that are hard in their hearts, puffed up in pride. They have other things going on in their life. They don't want to think about the second coming. They want to convince themselves that it's not real for whatever reason. And it seems like in some of these cases, the adversary is involved with that. He doesn't want you to be prepared for the second coming. Okay, verse 3. And it came to pass that the people began to wax strong in wickedness and abominations, and they did not believe that there should be any more signs or wonders given. And Satan did go about, leading away the hearts of the people, tempting them and causing them that they should do great wickedness in the land. So I think we need to be careful and not ignore these things. I mean, we don't need to come up with elaborate theories or say, oh, okay, so since this happened, count X number of days and then this is going to happen. Like, just observe, just take note, and that's what I'm trying to do. So I've added this to my spreadsheet called Timeline Second Coming. This is like my master timeline of things that have already happened, things that are sure. I'm not trying to predict the future. I do feel like the second coming is sooner than later, but I'm not trying to predict any sort of future timeline. So we have this right here, this radio burst that went for 19 days. Because it was a multi-day event, I added it to column I, just so you can more easily visualize that. And Yeah. And then it ended. Oh, what am I doing? I messed this up. It ended. Oh, no, I didn't mess it up. Look, it ended September 9th, President Nelson's 101st birthday. It's also worth pointing out that's the day that Israel struck Qatar. And it seems like that's what led to the. How did it go? Oh, yeah, that's what led to the final hostages being released. It's been a while since we've talked about that. But anyway, it was a major strike that happened on President Nelson's birthday. You had this escalation. I don't know that it was necessarily too significant now that we have this much time has passed, but Poland became the first NATO member to fire during the Ukraine war by shooting down Russian drones that had violated its airspace. And then the next day, I just always have to be careful with my words. We had this event that happened at Utah Valley University the day after President Nelson's birthday. And on that same day, you had this unusually deep earthquake, 68 kilometers, originating in Earth's mantle, striking near Vernal, Utah, the same day as what happened at Utah Valley University. And then you have this President Nelson passing away. He passed away 7 days before General Conference. It's another 7. He served, I'm not going to pull up the spreadsheet, but I kind of take note of it here. He served 7 years, 7 months, 7 weeks, and 7 days as president of the church. For that general conference, there was what's classified as 100-year storm in Utah. It affected mostly Tooele County as well as Salt Lake, and there was a little bit of flooding in Salt Lake City. I think that's significant because the 2 apostles that President Nelson and President Oaks replaced after they died exactly 1 year apart. January 11th of 1983 and 1984. In between their death dates, not exactly in the middle, but in between that time, there was this unusual flood in downtown Salt Lake City from the summer runoff, and it flooded the streets of downtown Salt Lake, right up close to the Salt Lake Temple. They had to use sandbags to divert the flow. Anyway, that's all that I really want to mention in this video, but it's just, I don't know. This is incredible. If I've missed anything that you feel like is significant, please send it my way. Again, I'm not trying to track every single little earthquake, hurricane. There needs to be something really outstanding about it. A special date, a special location. Science has never observed this type of whatever before. It broke a record, or this type is the last time we saw this kind of thing was like 100 years ago, or things like that. That's the type of stuff I'm trying to collect. And yeah. All right, well, that's going to be it for this one. I'll talk to you guys later.